Hello.
Hi. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I think as Deanna has shown, you all know a lot about at least what the tools are out there, and a lot of folks know, I think it's the premise of this session, a lot of folks know that these are powerful tools and they can be used for advocacy. We've all seen examples of that through Move On or our friends asking us to do things on Facebook or whatever it might be. What I'm going to do is try and sort of provide a strategic framework to understand why these things are useful and sort of what are the ingredients you want to make a network pop like that. So first of all, social networks are not actually a new thing, even though it's like the latest thing that we hear being talked about all the time. In fact, we all are born with social networks. This is the one that I was born with up in Poughkeepsie in 1971. Bunch of hippies. I'm happy to say so. Here's the network of friends that I go to the beach with in North Carolina every year. Here's me and my two roommates from whatever, 12 years ago or something, who we formed a very fast bond. We'll always have had that experience together. Here's me and my colleague Tracy from an old organization. We were at a conference together. Here's my mom and some of her friends. They're also part of my extended social network. And here's me and my husband and our close friend John Edwards. Not really an active part of my social network, but I know people who know him. And that's funny, but it's for real. That's what social networks are about. So if I need to, that's within my reach. He's only 2 steps away from me in the right situation. So these are all examples of social networks. We also have social marketing already, and social media to another extent. That's what happens whenever we tell our friends, you should go see this movie, or you should come to this protest with me. Or you should check out this website. We're doing social marketing right there. And so the only difference is that now that we have the internet, it makes these social networks, the internet being a network of networks, it makes these networks pop, and it makes there's new networks, and they're all better connected and easier to use. So now, and this is the point of this conference, is we don't, well actually it's one of the points of this conference. For those of us who aren't journalists, some of us, what we bring to this media reform conversation is the fact that we are all media now, and we don't have to rely on big media to tell us what to do. And in my world, in doing nonprofit advocacy, we also don't have to rely on big organizations telling us what to do either, right? Our friends can tell us what to do. I can decide we should do a campaign to kick Elizabeth Dole out of the Senate and start organizing my friends. There are tools, and I can do that. I started, but I didn't try very hard. So this isn't just a technology change, it's an organizational change, a cultural change, especially for nonprofits. So everyone's heard at least one story of a time when something happened or some information got released that the media wasn't very interested in, but probably bloggers were. They might have been right-wing bloggers or left-wing bloggers. I can think of examples from either side. And one person breaks the news, 10 bloggers read that and blog about it, 10 bloggers read each of them, and there's 100 people blogging, and so on, like that shampoo ad. That's a blog swarm, right? And there wasn't anyone saying, okay, everybody, today we're going to write about Dan Rather, or today we're going to write about Jeff Gannon, for that matter, right? It happens organically in a somewhat leaderless fashion. There's absolutely still an important role for leaders, but the point is that there wasn't any organization or hierarchy that was instructing everybody to do the same thing. Each individual person or blog or Twitterer did it at the same time, or did it following each other and formed this swarm. So the term that I use for this is network-centric advocacy. That's because the way I learned it, but these are all valid things to call it. They're all sort of different filters on pretty much the same thing. So, for example, the Howard Dean campaign called it people-powered, and a lot of people call it Web 2.0 because, again, it's the users being empowered to do, publishing themselves, connecting to each other, doing what they want. 10 years ago, the Clue Train Manifesto was written, and that's the same principle but applied to marketing. And of course, I started out as an activist, and so I also call it grassroots organizing. That's basically what it is. So I don't care what you call it. Okay, oh my God, here comes the important part, really fast. No, it's too important, I won't rush it. So there are 5 things that I think make networks swarm or be effective at whatever it is you're trying to get them to do, okay? And the first one is having social ties with trust or relationships. Again, it depends on what the network is that you're trying to connect. When we're looking at social networks, then there's social ties between people, but if you're trying to get an organization to work effectively, it might be more the professional ties. People have to know each other and trust each other to want to listen to the information they might get from someone else. And these relationships can be virtual, real. Online relationships are as real as any other, so that's irrelevant. The next thing is having a common story. This can be an experience that you shared, like my college roommates, or people who may share a perspective, but more likely an injustice that you might have shared together, or it can also just be common language that you use around things. For example, I know a lot of people at conference like to talk about impeaching Bush, but then there's other people for whom that is a real turnoff, even though they're concerned about the exact same issues, but the language is not connecting them in that particular case. The third thing is the dense communication grid. If you think of a transportation grid or a network of streets and how the redundant network routes traffic around very easily, there's going to be a URL where you can get all this at the end, so you don't have to take notes too feverishly. So if you think of a network of city streets as opposed to a cul-de-sac, right, where if a tree goes down across a cul-de-sac and sort of cuts that street off, that's it. There's no other way to get out. Whereas in a network of city streets, if one street gets blocked off, you've got a million other ways to go around. So it's about having that dense network of connections and many ways to connect. So online and in person, maybe by phone, maybe by IM, email, web, Facebook, and so on. The fourth thing is a culture of sharing or openness. It can be sharing information like we do on Wikipedia. It can be sharing knowledge, training each other, sharing information, or sharing a space. And Creative Commons is a perfect example of people, and especially bloggers and photographers, willingness to share things and saying, yes, I'm open to this. Also, transparency is part of this. And that is, otherwise we can't take your stuff and share it with everybody else if you're not open to letting people get at it. It also means not putting your stuff behind a paywall, journalists. Okay. And finally, just the sort of the meta aspect is, do you actually know that you're a part of this network? So when you get alerts that say, people who like purple pants, it's time to take action. Like, are you in that club? Right? If you don't know you are, then you're not going to respond to that call to action from your friend because you don't think you're in that network. So you have to, in some cases it means actively joining it, like for organizations like mine, I need people to sign up for my list so they'll be in that network. But socially, you can also, you can see how that applies to social groups. So this is actually the introduction of the presentation I normally do, and you can see the whole thing at that address there, lotusmedia.org/5. Thank you.